One thing Ohio State currently has that Oregon does not is two guys at running back, one last name Henderson, the other last name Judkins. Those two guys individually, Mo, are going to be a big asset and a big reason Ohio State's quarterbacks aren't asked to do all other worldly things. They're not needing to go into a game and throw for 500 passing yards and 5 touchdowns, and hopefully they can get 40 to 50 yards on the ground and another touchdown using their legs. They're not going to be asked to do that. What are they going to be asked to do? Run a more balanced offense, more even with the pass and run combination, but also you may find games where they're running the ball more than they pass the ball. And if you think about Cardale Jones winning that conference championship game, beating Bama, and then beating Oregon, honestly, the national championship, I don't believe he would have played as well as he did in those games if it was not for Ezekiel Elliott and the offensive line opening up massive holes and let that man run to the end zone consistent multiple times every single game. So we can look at the quarterback position and say quarterback this, quarterback that. It's the guys behind him or whoever the quarterbacks are that will make their job, the quarterback's job, a whole lot easier.
Yeah, and I mean, just think about it. We got a quarterback that played a lot of games. Like,
yes.
How often does your starting quarterback get to be the epitome of experience in college? You don't really play more than 5 years, period. And we have a guy who's basically played 5 years of college football. And so you have the experience. And like you said, if Judkins and Henderson can be elite running backs, and I think they are elite running backs.
Yeah.
If they stay healthy, Chip Kelly's entire offense is based off of the success of the run. And his quarterback, he could start running early and it looks like, oh, Howard might only have to throw 198 yards and 2 touchdowns to win this game. But the offense is so respected running the ball that they just explode for 400 yards of offense completely, 250 of that being passing in the second half. So everything is going to go off the run game. But you saw it like Zeke, when we won the national championship, Zeke ran for 200-some yards. Cardale Jones also threw for almost 300, but you didn't even bat an eye because his 300 or almost 300 were efficient. It was making plays when you need them, but none of them were just standout throws, 70-yard bombs, beating the defense down the field. But like because of the run game, I just pick you apart up and down the field. And that's how you end up scoring 42 on Alabama. That's how you end up blowing out Oregon because you control the game. Oregon tries to run this high-powered, fast offense. And we stop them defensively. We milk time off the clock, but we're scoring every time we get the ball because everything's off the run. So I think that's going to be the success. I think how we run the ball and play defense is exactly how we're going to win the national championship. And people might not love it, but I think this team is going to we got a lot of 5-star wide receivers on the team. But I think this team is going to look more like a Georgia national champion than a high-powered, who even with a high-powered offense wins a bunch of national championships outside of like Alabama? Like you want this to be Alabama with Mac Jones and Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and Jerry Jeudy and all Henry Ruggs and all them on the roster because we have that type of talent. But I think this is going to look like when they had all that talent, but also had Derrick Henry back there and had to play against Ohio State and he tried and run them to a national championship. You're going to have to play defense. Some games are going to be ugly, but when you're 12-0, 13-0, 14-0, 15-0, playing in that national championship game, those 15 games prior to how you won are not going to matter. And so I think Ohio State fans everything's not going to look great every week. We might win some ugly games, but we as long as it's 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4, we have to stop focusing how it looks early on and just let it become into midseason form and then let it happen into the Big Ten championship. We just got to be a little patient this year because I think there's going to be some things early on that you're not going to love, but we'll learn from and fix the very next week, and it won't even matter.
You know, this team right now, we're thinking about that game specifically against Oregon and why Ohio State, we both believe, at least right now, believe Ohio State will win that game. Ryan Day, it was a graphic going around Twitter recently, and I don't know exactly who put it out there, who put it together. It was basically Ohio State in top 10 matchups in the playoff era since 2014 until last year. And I forget the exact total record Ohio State had, but I know Urban Meyer was 12-3 in top 10 matchups. That includes regular season and playoff games, I believe conference championship too, while he was at Ohio State. Ryan Day's 8-7. So my expectation right now is that both of these teams will be ranked as top 10 teams, probably top 5 teams, when they play week 7 of the upcoming season. That's one of those things, as big of an issue as it is for Ryan Day against Michigan or against certain coaches in Saban or Kirby Smart, or he eventually got over that Dabo hump. Dude, that top 10 matchup thing, he might not be a big game coach. And I don't want to sit up here and say he is or he isn't. The record says 8-7 against top 10 opponents. But also, he's done a lot of things differently this offseason that make me want to believe he will be victorious in this game. But sometimes big game Ryan Day is not the big game Ryan Day you want. And so that matchup, that can kind of begin to turn the narrative about how Ryan Day coaches and Ryan Day's teams perform in big-time matchups.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I agree with everything you said, actually. Just if you look at it from a different lens, first off, Ryan Day had to precede one of the greatest coaches of the past 40 years.
Yes.
Like outside of Nick Saban, Urban Meyer's been he has been the best college football head coach outside of Nick Saban throughout this era. So you have to supersede that. And when this guy is 12-3 in big top 10 matchups, oh man, sometimes it never gets as good as that. Like,
yes,
Alabama might go through that right now where we have a really good head coach, but he's no Nick Saban. Of course not. He's one of the greatest. You don't always get to have one of the greatest walk in and remain and keep grooming the greatest. But with Ryan Day, I say the biggest thing, and I can't say it's recruiting because we have one of the top 3 recruiting classes. I think some of the teams in the Big Ten have caught up to Ohio State. And I say that when I say Alabama's been caught in the SEC a little bit. Like Georgia passed them and won 2 in a row. And really outside of losing, Alabama should have played for 3 national championships in a row. Nobody valued Nick Saban any differently. I think they caught up to Ohio State. The gap between the best team in the conference now and your next best is not huge. It usually was. We usually knew we'd get scared by Penn State, scared by Michigan, but we win those games. Now we get scared by Penn State and don't beat Michigan. So now that we're not, I guarantee you, if we had the same record, but he wasn't losing to Michigan at the end of the year, we would still love Ryan Day. And I think it'd be accepted that, hey, when he goes to play the SEC, he doesn't have the greatest record. Neither did Jim Tressel. But he had that 2002 national championship. Urban Meyer had that 2014 national championship that could carry on. If Ryan Day was to do it this year, we will not bat an eye about Ryan Day for the next 10 years. If he can win a national championship and tie that to his name, we will not talk about the lack of winning against the SEC or these top 10 matchups for the next 10 years. The only thing is Ryan Day hasn't brought a trophy home. Urban Meyer did it early. Like he was the coach for it was his 3rd year. And the only reason we couldn't win before that was because of the whole bowl thing with Jim Tressel. Jim Tressel won back in 2002. Nobody cared that we lost to LSU, lost to Florida. Like it didn't damage him that much because he already had that national championship next to his name. So I think if Ryan Day gets one this year, the narrative changes, obviously. He signs a 10 or probably 20-year deal with Ohio State. We never let him get up out of Columbus for the rest of his life. And you don't worry about that 8-7 record. It's got that hardware, and it matters. And Ohio State's due. It's been what? But when Tressel won, it was 12 years before we won again. Urban Meyer won in 2014. We going on year 11 without winning a national championship. So I think it's also about that time. Ryan Day been the coach for 6, going on 7 years. So I think just people are so frustrated with Ryan Day because he don't have that hardware under his name during his tenure as the head coach. But if he brings that, the conversation changes. And there's going to be some people who still like, dang, we won the national championship, but now we're going to have to keep with the mediocrity of Ryan Day if that's how they feel, if he's mediocre. But buys you time when you win a championship. That's the difference. They won early. He didn't. And so now the clock is ticking without a national championship. And not only is it ticking for we won in 2014 with Urban Meyer, but now it's just ticking, period. Ohio State's ready for a national championship. They don't care who the head coach is at this point. The clock is ticking. It's time to bring one home. It's 2020-something. We haven't left these decades without one. So now we can't leave the 2020s, and we're about to be in the middle of 2020. And the 2020s entering 2025 when the national championships played. So I think also Ohio State is just eager to bring one to the program, period. It doesn't even matter who the head coach is.